Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I am your host, Marc Guberti, the content marketing expert, bringing you 3 new episodes each week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Hello, Breakthrough Success Sisters. I just wanted you all to know before the episode actually starts, I've been working a little bit behind the scenes to give you something really special. So a while ago, I wrote my book, Content Marketing Secrets, which helps people create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue. And I just put the finishing touches together to offer that for free to anyone who is interested. So if you want your free copy of Content Marketing Secrets, all you have to do is head over to marcguberti.com/book. Now, let's jump right into the episode. And we've got this thing called the influencer economy that we are all a part of. And you see a lot of influencers building audiences that are really engaging with their content. And this is the business that we really need to tap into in order to achieve some of these massive results, like getting a lot of book sales, getting a lot of people on our email list. A lot of the massive results that you are seeing now come from relationships that people are building with other people who are a part of that influencer economy. So we're going to talk about the business of influence in this episode of Breakthrough Success. So today's guest, he is a recognized leader in the world of business social media. And in addition to being named one of the marketing's 10 biggest thought leaders by CMO.com, he has also been recognized as a Forbes top 50 social media power influencer, as well as a Forbes top 5 social sales influencer. He is a popular social media keynote speaker who has spoken at hundreds of events over 4 continents since his first speech on social media in 2009. And his book, The Business of Influence, will teach you how you can tap your business into the influencer economy and achieve massive results. Today's guest for episode 284 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Neal Schaffer. Neal, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey, Mark, thank you for the kind introduction, and the honor is all mine.
Neal, I'm really happy to have you on the show today because the influencer economy it just keeps growing and it's so important. You are one of the top guys in it, so I feel very honored to have you on the show. But before we get into the whole influencer economy and building relationships with influencers, I'm wondering if you could just give us some background as to why you decided to commit to helping brands with their influencer marketing.
Sure. I like to say that social media marketing and digital marketing, it's sort of an industry that found me. So I started out, 10 years ago, actually, with a humble blog. And everything I've done since then has really come from customer demand. So, I first felt there was a need and there was a want for a lot of information about LinkedIn and how to use LinkedIn for sales and marketing. And that was my initial focus. The third book I wrote called Maximize Your Social was because everybody was asking me, hey, Neal, what are your recommendations for a social media strategy? How do you measure social media ROI? So I wrote a book. After that, it was like, Neal, what tools do you recommend? So I actually created a conference called the Social Tools Summit, which we no longer operate. But so everything I've done is really based on customer demand. And I feel like over the last 2 years, the number one question I get asked now really is all about influencer marketing. And in fact, it's also a lot of people saying, hey, my next door neighbor is a YouTuber who just bought $1 million house, or so-and-so makes, $200 every time she posts on Instagram. How do I get in on the action? So there's a tremendous interest about influencers, influencer marketing. I sort of sum it all up into one word, the business of influence, which is the name of this book. And as I delve, deeper and deeper into it, I find that there's a lot of concepts and a lot of people misleading, I think, the industry in some ways. And there's just huge, even more than I thought, huge amount of benefits for people, for businesses once they tap into its power. So, yeah, it's all, I didn't come with an agenda. It's like I said, it's really the need that I think the market has to better understand and to better leverage it. And the timing for the book couldn't be better.
And I have seen an uptick in like influencer content, like influencer marketing content. Like I've seen a lot more content also talking about micro influencers, which for anyone who doesn't know, an influencer who may not have as big of an audience, but that audience is highly engaged in what that particular influencer is posting. So I've seen a big uptick. I was going to ask some questions about influencer marketing. We're definitely going to cover that, the business of influence, but I have to side back a little bit because you mentioned that a lot of your business and what you do has been driven by what other people have asked and what other people have recommended. Like they say, Neal, I want this on LinkedIn, or Neal, I see this Instagrammer making $200 a picture. How do I get in this influencer marketing? One of the key things, though, is that people are coming to you and telling you what they want. So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit on how do you get your audience to let you know exactly what they want so you can more easily provide it to them?
Well, I think it's a combination of a few things. That's really a great question. It sort of taps into somewhat of how do you become influential. I mean, first of all, you have to get yourself out there. If nobody knows about you, nobody's going to talk to you, right? So getting yourself out there, I think there's obviously an online component through social media and through content marketing and blogging and podcasting or whatever your favorite content medium is one part of it. The other part is really building a community around sort of your expertise as people start to, follow you, listen to you. And I think then once, you're out there and you start to build what we could call a community or following, whatever it is, then I think it's really, listening. It's taking every question you get, whether it's a blog comment, whether it's a tweet. I like to say no tweet left behind. And I do try to respond, even with like 220,000 followers. I try to respond to every tweet that asks me a genuinely authentic question. So listening is always important. And it's funny because I began sort of shunning all the influencers in my industry because I would be, sharing other influencers' content and sort of tweeting at them, and I never got a response. And I said, influencers should always be caring about their community, and they should always be wanting to respond to people, right? I mean, they're experts and they're creating content because they want to help others. So I decided at that time, and this is like a decade ago, that I really was on a mission to help people, and I didn't want to become that person. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really, really good advice for all of you. Is it's not a one-way street. When you listen and you respond to people, you learn so much, and that really helps you in your own direction because I don't know the listeners, you might be self-employed, you might be marketers, you might be authors, speakers, but you always need to pivot with the market. And whenever you hear people asking those questions, it means they don't know who to turn to for the answers. If they know who to turn to, they're probably not going to be asking you, right? Unless they sort of doubt that other person. So really, I cannot stress how important enough it is. And if you're not getting those questions, it's really to ask the questions, really to go out there to your followers as you start to build this community, one or two people at a time, is try to engage them in those conversations and ask them, what are your top priorities right now? Maybe it's to write a roundup blog post. I just did a podcast on this myself. And what I'm finding with influencer marketing is that, we've always had these sort of themes of, Dale Carnegie, how to win friends and influence people, or we've had, affiliate marketing or reaching out to bloggers. We've had sort of these concepts, and relationship marketing is another sort of keyword. And Mari Smith wrote a great book about that. We've always had these sort of undercurrents and themes of influence in business, right? And really what we're seeing with influencer marketing is it's being reinvented or reincarnated for the age of social media. So all the things that you used to do, if you've read these classic books or you've engaged in relationship marketing or you've done affiliate marketing maybe, they're all sort of components of influencer marketing today. So the definition is pretty broad. And even reaching out to people in your community, they don't have to be million follower people on Instagram. Anybody that has a community is someone that you can tap into. Everybody has influence. That's one of the key messages in my book. So even looking at your followers and starting with the people that have 100 followers, I don't know, right? Draw a line, but reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm going to do a roundup blog post. And instead of trying to reach out to these, famous people, I'm going to reach out to authentic people that I think are experts that may not have a large following, but that are going to really appreciate that and provide great content. And in doing so, you're going to figure out what makes them tick, and you're going to get some ideas for your business as well. So, that's where I think a lot of businesses and people have been misled. And it's really fueling this dark influencer economy of buying fake followers and fake engagement, right? None of that leads you anywhere. So you really want to start with the people around you, the followers. If you're a company that has employees, if you have partners. I mean, in the 90s when I was selling semiconductors, we had all these partners that we would call centers of influence. These partners would often give us leads because they were engaging with different departments inside the companies we wanted to get into. So when I train insurance salespeople on social selling, how to use LinkedIn and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook for sales, they talk about these centers of influence in their community, which might be financial advisors. They may be CPAs, right? Anybody out there who can help you get leads, who has influence over, those are influencers. They're not just the mommy bloggers and the 20-somethings on Instagram or the teenagers on Snapchat. So first you need to do a reset, right? And once you look at it in those terms, you begin to sort of open up and your eyes see lots of opportunities, and you begin to think of social media in a very, very different way. So, Mark, I know that was a very, very roundabout answer to your question, but I hope that all made sense and gave you some auxiliary information that might lead to another question you have.
I mean, it's really interesting you mentioned the engaging part on social media, because I feel like a lot of people, they only think of the media part. They think about pushing their message instead of engaging with people who are actually listening to that message, reading the blog post. So, I mean, especially for someone who, I mentioned earlier your credentials like Forbes, top 50 social media power influencer, other things like that. You're still taking the time to interact with your audience. That's usually something that people forget to do as they get bigger and they grow their audience. So it's interesting that you continue doing that to this day. And one of the things that you made me think of, I had Jeff Goins on the show, episode 50, and he said something like you have to be able to balance doing all the podcast interviews and also with doing the things that get you on the podcast. In some cases, it could be writing the book, creating the training courses, etc. So my question for you is, how do you balance the social media interaction with people in your audience with doing some of the other things like writing content, creating content, communicating with people on your emails, just everything else that goes on with your business? How do you balance that and have the time to interact as well?
That is the challenge that all of us that have a large following have. So on the one hand, you have client work. And even if you are a speaker and author, you probably also do work on behalf of clients, consulting or training or even speaking at an event where you need to prepare for. So you always have to balance the client work with basically your own PR, right? Blogging, podcasting, engaging with users on a one-to-one basis, sometimes with a direct message or maybe, blast it out during a comment where everybody can see it. There's always that balance you need to have. And there's some times where you get so busy with client work, you don't have time to blog. You don't have time to do a podcast. I just revamped my podcast. I did about 128 episodes, and then I took a 2-year break, right? I could not work it into my everyday rhythm. Well, I finally got back into working it into my everyday rhythm 2 years later. I'm actually getting way more listens now than I did before. So that's been a success. So I always say, look, if you're trying to and you're doing 3 of these a week, which is amazing. And you're my hero, right? That's really, really hard to keep doing. I tell people, look, if you're trying to keep to a schedule and you're challenged by it, I would rather you take a pause and take a break rather than publish content that might not be up to the same standards that you want to maintain. Because inevitably, if you try to do something too frequently and you try to just, religiously stick to that schedule, the quality may hurt, right? If you don't have the inspiration to maintain that. So I would say take a step back. And I think if your community, if they know you, they'll accept that. And I've taken breaks from blogging 6 months sometimes, right? But what I've been trying to do when I get back into it is trying to create something that's scalable and maintainable. So it's trying to find ways, and probably in my case, it's using more external resources that's going to help me maintain a schedule. And I'm really happy that I've found certain strategic resources that help me. I penciled on my calendar. This is the time that I need for PR, because once you stop doing that for a while, it really does hurt, because everybody is vying for attention right now, and in what you call the attention economy as well. And when you stop doing that, you really do hurt. So it's a really, really hard balance to maintain. I'd say definitely penciling things in calendars, trying to find external resources that can help, and just trying to maintain the sanity of it, right? You never want to turn away client work, obviously. So there will be times when it's going to be really challenging. That's why when you have those times where you have less client work, for instance, I focused on writing The Business of Influence over the summer, where the speaking is usually a little bit drier compared to spring and fall, where I get a lot of speaking engagement. So, and winter is another, December, right? December, January have fewer speaking events than in the spring and fall as well. So you got to find those periods in the year where you can just hunker down and, block off dates and try to, create a lot of content so that it lasts you longer, right? So you don't have those gaps. Really, that's the only way to do it. There's no secret to it. We're limited by time. I have 2 young kids. I am, treasurer for my kids' soccer team. I'm on the PTA executive board at his elementary school. And I try to stay as involved as possible in my own family and my own life, and try to maintain that balance. But you're going to be very busy. But I think the benefits of helping people and of making new friends and of, growing into a bigger and bigger presence on the internet, to me, excites me. And that's what gets me going on a day-to-day basis. So I love it. But if you want to try to avoid work and you think becoming an influencer is the easy way around, I think at some point you're going to always be busy, and it's going to shift. But every time I engage with someone, I know that I'm building a fan and a customer for life. And you never know where that person goes. You never know if they end up becoming the CEO of a company, or, you know what I mean? So, it comes with a caveat, but I think that it's a great caveat to have. And I think it is possible to maintain that balance, but it takes time to learn how to do it.
I mean, I agree with that whole balance. And I feel like that the core of this issue with the balance is that as an influencer, and I'd say I put this in the general bracket of being an entrepreneur, there's always that other thing that you could be doing. You could always be replying to another email. You can be writing another blog post. You will never have like everything checked off that you could possibly be doing, because, I mean, if we could actually stay up 24/7 physically, like entrepreneurs, influencers would probably be working during that time frame, or spending time with their families and striking that balance. So there's never things that we run out of doing. Another thing you pointed out, the consistency in which you can scale down on that a little bit because you want to provide more value in each thing you post. I mean, Tim Ferriss is a really great example of that, because you see him, like, you don't even know his frequency, but you know when he's got a podcast that's really good. So just wanted to offer that comparison for people as well.
Yeah, you need, whenever you publish something, you want to have your community at the edge of their seat. You want it to be the first thing when they see the notification that they pop open, right? And that's why, like Instagram, I try to publish every day. I don't do a lot of stories. I don't want to publish content there unless I know it's going to have impact, right? And I think that the same goes with a podcast or a blog post. So I think that it's good to maintain a certain amount of quality. I also think that once you get out there, there's lots of different people that reach out to you for a lot of different objectives, right? And you need to pick and choose. And I think that's how, as an entrepreneur, you maintain your time. You can't do everything. You need to be strategic. So if email marketing is not working, but podcasting is, do more podcasting, right? Or if email marketing works and podcasting isn't, you need to go where you see the ROI. But you also need to, as people ask you questions and stuff, for instance, I mean, here's some tactics I use, and I had this conversation today. It was a company that clearly reached out to me because somehow they wanted to get on my podcast, right? And I'm like, hey, if you have a tool, why don't you send me the beta of your tool? I'll check it out, and we can have a conversation from there. And they go, okay, well, we'll definitely get you access, but do you think, you need to interview our staff for your podcast? And I'm like, dude, if you're reaching out to me for the pure objective of getting on my podcast, you're reaching out to the wrong person, right? Mm. And this is the thing, right? People are taught they can send these blank templates out to 100 different bloggers and say, hey, you should link to my blog post because it's better than the one you link to. It's like, dude, I don't link for free, right? So you need to pick your battles. Just like as an entrepreneur, you should be picking your clients. You need to pick your marketing mediums, but you also need to pick who you respond to. I'll often get asked social media questions on Twitter, and I say, hey, I have a community that responds to social media questions called the Social Media Center of Excellence. So instead of me responding one-to-one, I want you to take the extra effort of joining my community and posting that question in my community where other people may be able to respond. And you're going to get a better response, and everybody else gets to see that response as well. So there are little things you can do like that help you save a minute here, a minute there, and that really adds up, right? You know, hey, I want a guest blog for your blog. Well, did you actually read the instructions and fill out the form with all the information? So I created an Evernote, right? A cut and paste. So whenever I get that, boom, cut and paste, send it over to them. And you can do canned responses in Gmail as well. So there are little things you can do like that, even though you're an army of one. And I know Tim Ferriss would say, oh, just get a VA to do all that. And I do have VAs. They do various things, but there's certain things they don't do. And you know, if I can do it in 15 seconds, and you really get a feel for the communication that comes through when you do that as well. So yeah, so there are little things that you can do like that. The latest one is sort of like the LinkedIn connection request, and immediately you accept, and they're ready to schedule a call with you, and hey, I can really help you, and you know, when do you have time for a chat? And I just unconnect and block. I don't even bother responding because I know they're not interested in me as a person. They just see me as business. So, you know, as good of a person as we all try to be, there's certain times where people try to take advantage of you or they try to sell you something, and you need to maintain your brand equity, right, and your reputation. So at some point, you don't have to respond to everything. And I think that also comes with time and practice. You learn the things that you should respond to and the things you don't need to waste a second of your time on. And it's funny because I had a conversation on Twitter just last week about this. And this guy is like, that's just rude not responding to that on LinkedIn. And I'm like, dude, I either take a minute to respond to this, or I take a minute to do client work. I take a minute to write a blog post. I take a minute to spend time with my family. What do you think is most important? So that's a good sanity check to have with everything you do as an entrepreneur, especially when it relates to social media, right?
Yeah, and I mean that time allocation, a minute you're doing on one thing, you cannot get that minute back. That's why they say like time is more expensive than money. And I mean, it's a really great point. And I mean, we've hit upon a lot of different parts of the influencer economy. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about building relationships, because there's a lot of different ways. Some people, I mean, you mentioned it, they just like send a bunch of rubric emails. I've gotten those emails where it's like, right, I want to write a guest post for you. They don't tell me what it is. They don't go through the requirements, anything like that. But I mean, there's also like approaches where people overexpand, where they're saying hi and replying to so many comments and things like that, that a lot of people see them, but they're not nurturing the relationship. So what do you believe is the best approach so that we're building healthy relationships that we're able to nurture instead of just these like one-off communications?
Yeah, that's, you know, I think it really starts obviously with literally creating a list of those that you think are influential in your industry, and really starting out with those that are closest to you in terms of influence. I think the problem is that people often immediately, they'll try to contact the most influential people in their industry, right? And those are the people that are the most selective, and they're the ones that you want to try to create the best relationship with, but you're always going to get off on the wrong foot, and they're never going to respond to you again, because first impressions count. So you always, you know, I like to call it sort of like the influencer totem pole. You always want to work your way up that, starting with the people that are, you know, the closest to you. Obviously, they have slightly more influence with you, but you want to start there. And it's going to be good practice for you as well as you try to leverage these relationships for your different business objectives. So it really starts with genuinely engaging with them. I mean, it first starts with actually getting to know them better, right? Reading their content, taking the time to do that. You know, when you see something of value, commenting on their blog, when you see something of value that they tweet, of actually retweeting it. And if you were to say, take 5 or 10 people, and on a daily basis, let's say 5 people, on a daily basis, do that once a day. Comment on their blog once a day, you know, maybe retweet one of their tweets. It has to obviously be authentic, and you have to believe in it. But if you were to do that, you know, over the course of a week, and you did that with 5 different people and none of them responded to you, I would say to move on, because if you are an influencer, like I said, if you have people reaching out to you that have genuine interest, and you're not an absolute nobody, you have a social profile, you're not a bot, right? Yeah, the person may be thinking, why is this person all of a sudden reaching out to me so frequently? So you may want to play with that frequency, but you should be able to get some sort of reaction from them. You should be able to get on their radar. And this is what you want to maintain over time. You just want to be on their radar before you actually reach out to them, is my number one advice. And before you reach out to them, after sending all these what I call social signals, right? Obviously, they need to respond, but you also want to see sort of, are these people working with other people? How do they work with them? Do they have a podcast? Who are they interviewing? Do they accept bloggers to their website? Well, what are the conditions for that, and what have you? And I think that's a really, really easy way to start the relationship off right and get to know what they are looking for in a relationship. And then obviously saying, hey, I noticed that you have a bunch of bloggers on your website. I'd love to be considered one of them. I read your website for instructions. Here's why I'd like to apply. I think I can really add value. And I guarantee if you get to that point, there's a really, really good chance that they're going to accept you, versus if you reached out of the blue with a copy and paste template, without any previous engagement, and said, hey, I'd love to write a guest blog post.
Right.
So like with everything else in time, right, it takes time to get to know people, and social media is no different. It can help accelerate that, where we physically do not have a chance to meet someone. But in order to create a genuine relationship where people will go out of their way to help you, it all starts with investing a little bit of time. You don't have to invest a lot of time. You need to create a daily routine. Maybe, you start with 5 influencers, and it's a different influencer once a day, right? 1 or 2 minutes a day. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but if you do that for a month, and maybe you choose 30 different influencers, and you just do 1 blog comment per day, and you do that every day for 30 different people, look who responds, and start with those people. And slowly, as you begin to be known by them, and as they begin to share your content, as you begin to, guest post on their website, you start to move up that influencer totem pole, right? It's like, hey, I've already written on website A, I've been interviewed on podcast B, and slowly but surely, as you begin to target more influential people, you begin to be sort of respected by them. And that's how you move up the totem pole. Is really the best way to sort of visualize what that looks like. And there's a lot of other things you need to do, but that's really, if you want to go for the jugular, as we say, that's really the right way. But it really starts with investing the time into getting to know them, and showing that you're a fan, and really, being selfless in sharing their content, giving them advice, commenting, and what have you.
I really like that idea of creating the list. And I mean, I also like the idea of that list is not final, where, I mean, it's not just about adding people to the list. It's also about subtracting people from that list who you aren't getting that response from right away. Because, I mean, again, we were just talking about time. Like, a minute you spend commenting on someone who's probably not going to reply to you is the same minute you can use to comment on someone's post, and you're more likely to get a response. So, I mean, I've heard the list before, but I haven't really heard it as articulated, where it's like you can definitely weed out some of the people on the list if they're not engaging with you, so you can focus more and go all in on the people who are engaging with you and building those relationships.
Here's the reality, okay? It's like marriage. It's like dating. If I don't know what, whoever's listening to this podcast, I don't know what gender you are. I don't know your preference for gender, but if you were to at a place where you can meet people that you would like to better engage with, if you were to go up to 10 people, not all of them are going to be interested in you. And that's fine, because we're all different. The same thing goes for people. Same thing goes for people in general, whether you want to date them or whether they're an influencer. Not everybody is going to click for various reasons, right? And that's fine. And it's really accepting the fact that it's a sale. And I go back to my days in B2B sales, right, where it's a numbers game. Okay, so, I need to close 3 deals in order to be able to hit my goal this quarter. In order to close 3 deals, I know that I have to have 10 leads in the pipeline in order to close 3 deals. But in order to get a lead, I have to talk to 10 different people to get 1 lead. So therefore, I need to get 100 people. I have to engage with 100 people in order to convert 3. Now, I'm not saying, and that 3% whether it's for email click-through, whether it's for advertising click-through. Maybe 1.5% is a better number, but that's the reality, right? It's going to be really, really hard to get a lot. So you need to start with a bigger list, and you need to slowly read through it because not everyone's going to mesh. And that's really critical, right? Part of a strategy is deciding what to do, but it's also deciding what not to do. So instead of sending these obnoxious emails when someone doesn't respond after a week, forget about it, right? Because what's going to happen, I use a tool called Sane Toolbox. And literally, when I've already responded and these people just start, I'm on an autoresponder and they send the second and third, there's a functionality called black hole. And I will never see their email again because it's all being filtered out through this black hole functionality of this tool. And literally, you will never have the ability to work with them again. I'd rather you reach out once. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Maybe you come back to them at a later time, but you don't want to spin more cycles than you need to. I'd rather you move on to someone new because guess what? There's so many people out there that yield influence that can help you. Why narrow yourself to the same people? And that's another thing, right? Really think outside of the box and all the different people that can help you.
And I mean, you hit on that a lot of points again. I mean, like with the whole, not everyone's going to like you right away. And I mean, then you find the people who do like you and you really do focus on them. But at the same time, if someone's not interested, you don't want to pursue them too quickly, too fast, and maybe a few months down the line. I mean, I've had people who I contact them about something like being on Breakthrough Success. They say no. I reach out to that person maybe 6 months or a year later. Some of those people, they still say no. Of those people have come on board to be on the show. So it's something where you don't want to be too aggressive with the follow-up if the person doesn't express interest. But a no is something where if you come back to that person 6 to 12 months later, maybe you can get a yes. But it depends on different factors.
Totally. Part of it is timing, right? They don't respond to you because literally they're just too busy and then your email drops. So following up is okay, but yeah, leave some time off because if they were really interested in you, they would respond pretty quickly or let's say within a week. But it also raises the other important point, right? That a lot of influencers know each other and a lot of influencers talk with each other. I know there was a company that reached out to me that an influencer just reached out to me and said, hey, did this company reach out to you? They're really shady in what they're doing. Let's have a conversation. So literally a conversation between two influencers that was prompted by this company reaching out to both of us. So that's the other danger here is if you brush someone the wrong way, not only do first impressions count with that person, but people talk. They may talk to other people about that bad experience. So you really need to be careful. I mean, you're working with the people that you really want to become friends with. So just chill, be cool. Don't be overly aggressive. You're not trying to make a sale. You're trying to develop a relationship. And too many companies and people just look at it as a sale. Oh, I'm going to do anything I can to convert that person. No, it's a person that has their own business, right? They have their own emotions. They have their own legacy of working with people. And therefore, something we did not touch upon. I know we don't have much time left for our podcast, but I want to get this out. And once again, my sales background really helps me in influencers and in marketing in general. But it's something called WIIFM. Now, do you know what this means, Marc? It's something that okay, what's in it for me, right? So that's the key thing. I understand what's in it for you when you pitch me, right? But if there's no benefit for me, just getting hey, you can offer a 20% discount to your customers, to your community. It's like, okay, so I'm going to promote the heck out of your business, right? And all I get is 20% of a $10 per month. And I don't, what is the value of my promoting your brand? It's a lot more than 20% if there's a sale made. You're getting tons of free advertising from me. So it's that what's in it for me. And very few companies consider that. So one of the things that I teach in influencer marketing for businesses, and I want to teach you as well, even if you're an entrepreneur, is really when you do that first outreach, there better be something compelling from that influencer's perspective of why they want to engage with you. So I get asked to do a lot of podcasts, and I'll dig through the podcast, say, hey, is this really worthy of a podcast I want to be on, right? So when some people, and Marc, you'll laugh about this, they reach out to me, they only have 3 published podcasts. Hey, we want to feature you. It's like, dude, contact me when you've published like 20 podcasts, right? Or, I don't want to be your guinea pig, or I don't want you to rely on me to promote your podcast so that you begin to launch this huge podcast with my help. So there has to be some equity in the relationship is what I'm saying, because time is money. And like I said, you need to pick and choose, and influencers are going to be picking and choosing who they want to work with. And a lot of it's going to be based on what you can offer them. If you have a great podcast like yours, Mark, and with a big audience, a lot of meaty episodes that are aligned with sort of the audience I want to reach out to, then this is awesome, right? I know we scheduled this in advance because I had to finish writing my book, which I just finished over the weekend, so the timing's perfect. But that's the whole thing. So there's a lot of moving balls here. You've got to realize. So like I said, take a deep breath, chill, but get your list together on a daily basis. Make sure you're authentically engaging with at least one influencer from that list, and keep moving on. And over the course of 3 months, I guarantee you, if you authentically engage with 90 different influencers, I would tend to believe if you do it right that you're going to get at least one conversion. Hopefully, you're going to get a lot more than that, obviously. But that's really, I want you to spend the first 3 months not asking for something, but giving. Engaging. Then maybe 90 days from there, you begin that implementation. When they get to know you better, you get to know them better. And it's literally, you cannot use a copy and paste template. It's going to be personalized one by one because everybody is different. Everybody's needs are different. And how you fit into how you can help that influencer should be different as well. So if you're copy and pasting something at the end of that, or you're using a tool that helps you do that, then you are you haven't learn anything I'm teaching you right now, and I don't think you're going to be set up for success.
Neal, thank you for sharing so many great insights. And I mean, you emphasize that whole giving idea, and you give through your podcast interviews, through your content. And I'm wondering if you could give us 3 book recommendations that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
Wow. In terms just general business books, I mean, you mentioned the 4-Hour Work Week. That is something that if you're an entrepreneur, you better have read. Dave Kerpen, and I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but he is the author of these books on Likeable, and he came out with a great book just about how to become a likable business person that taps into, taps into sort of those Dale Carnegie type of themes. But Dave is an incredible entrepreneur who's now become a New York Times bestselling author, owns his own agency and what have you. So I would definitely check out Dave Kerpen's books about being likable, because guess what? Everybody loves to engage with people that are likable, right? We are attracted to them, and that's what he teaches. As far as a third book, that's a really, really good question. I'm trying to think right now. And in fact, I mean, I would obviously recommend my own books, but that would be sort of cheesy. So hold on a minute here. Let me go into, I'm going to throw out Gary Vaynerchuk. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and you haven't read Crush It, and even if you've had read Crush It, he came out with a major revision called Crushing It recently. So you should definitely check out his books. I mean, you have to, Gary Vaynerchuk says a lot of, I mean, he's obviously really, really intelligent and extremely influential in the entrepreneur space. He also has a lot of chutzpah, right? And what works for him may not work for everybody, right? But it's the mentality he has that says, I am a true expert in the field and I can help anybody and everybody else is crazy and you're missing the mark. It's being able to come out that boldly, which he has done and which I think he has successfully created his brand on. I think that's something to be replicated, because if you're just trying to copy what everybody else is doing, guess what? It's already been done. You're going to go nowhere. So you really need to be yourself, and you need to find your own path as an entrepreneur, and if you want to become an influencer. And I think his mentality, among other things that he's going to teach you, is really, really going to help you do that. So that's my 3 books.
Neal, thank you for those great book recommendations. Those will all be in the show notes, markguberti.com/E284. Also throwing content marketing secrets for anyone who wants to promote their content, grow their brands, and generate more revenue. That will be in the show notes, markguberti.com/CMS book. And before we wrap up this episode, Neal, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
Well, since you mentioned content marketing, what value is your content providing your target audience? And if you cannot whenever you write a blog post or create some piece of content, what have you, if you cannot answer that question, then you need to rethink what you're doing. So it's not, I think a lot of people with content marketing tend to replicate what else is out there. You really need to find your own path. And the beautiful thing is nobody can copy you. You have your own unique perspectives on life, on business. It's just a matter of getting that out of your mind, out of your heart, and using that to help people. So don't be afraid to say something that might be a little bit different, right? Because it's sort of this echo chamber, especially in social media, where everybody sort of says the same thing. I mean, recently I read a blog post that I also contributed to where someone was saying, well, over the last 10 years, brands have consumers have lost trust in brands because of all their spamming and advertising. I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I don't think we've lost interest in brands, or I don't think we've lost trust in brands. I think we're just more aligning ourselves more with brands that sort of speak the same speak we have and have the same values we have. But I don't trust brands any differently over the last 10 years because of the social media. So, if you have a different spin on things, that's awesome. And that's how you begin to develop, really, that's how you become an influencer, is you have a uniquely insightful perspective on things. And I think anybody can do it, but it's really less about copying others. And sometimes, when I wrote my first 2 books on LinkedIn, I tried not to read any other book on the subject out there because I wanted to create something that was unique. And in order to do that, I had to literally lessen the influence that other people's content might have on me. So that's something to think about, right? It's not a matter of reading all these resources. And that comes back to that original point, Mark, where I said, I don't want to become like these influencers. And that's when I set out and said, instead of trying to engage with influencers, and instead of trying to read everything the influencers write, become the influencer. And you become the influencer when you do something unique, and when people reach out to you that aren't as influential, you accept them in with wide arms and open arms, and you help them, and you create value by creating your own community rather than trying to latch on the communities of others. Now, if there's cool influencers out there that engage back with you, that you find a natural alignment, awesome. But if not, reach out to others that don't have the same influential community that you might have, however small that is, and create genuine relationships with them. And that might be your best bet. That's sort of the route that I've taken. I haven't, I never did sort of reaching out to influencers. I saw all these people, with they went to events, they wanted to take pictures with all these influencers, and it was their claim to fame was just like they knew all these influencers. And to me, it's like, that's not a claim to fame. That doesn't show me any unique insight about you and what you think and how you can help me. So don't try to fall into that trap, right? If you can create relationships that are mutually beneficial, awesome. But just taking pictures at conferences with other influencers, I don't think is going to get you too far. It's all going to come down to your content. And it should be exciting. It should be insightful. It should be something that if you publish on a weekly or monthly, whatever frequency you do, that when people see the notification, that they want to click on yours rather than others because they know they're going to find something unique, deep, insightful. And that's really the best advice I can give you.
Neal, awesome stuff throughout this episode. Thank you so much for coming on. If you guys want to learn more about Neal, get his book, The Business of Influence. That will be in the show notes. And Neal, are there any other places where you want us to go to learn more about you and keep in touch?
Well, it's funny. The Business of Influence is a book that has not been published yet. I took the strategic decision to actually have a pre-publishing campaign, which I think expires tonight. So for those of you who, and I'm assuming you're not going to have this ready today, so you may not be able to take part in that campaign, but I do plan to obviously, blogs and podcasts. So just go to nealschaffer.com. That's, I'm Neal Schaffer everywhere on the internet, on social media. So just go to nealschaffer.com and subscribe. That's nealschaffer.com. And we'll keep in touch. And obviously when the book launches, we'll let you know.
Neal, again, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing all the great insights with us. It was such a pleasure to have you on Breakthrough Success.
Well, I appreciate the invite. The honor is mine. And I genuinely hope that obviously everyone listening will heed your advice and heed my advice, and we can all sort of crush it together. So I look forward to hearing from all the listeners and seeing how we can all help each other.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn